look, who spelled season wrong? Who did that?
We wanted to sound like a fancy beer. It's a saison.
Yeah, saison 4.
No more abuse of the French language.
Bienvenue au saison 4, épisode 25.
Yes, well, thank.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Yeah, welcome to Spockies, Season 4, Episode 25. My name is Tim Mitchell. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline Jr. in... Where are you? Not Seattle. You're in Mississauga, Ontario.
How's it going?
And we're also joined by Hamilipus Jr. in Seattle, Washington, back from Texas, I guess.
How's it going?
Were you in Texas?
I was in Texas. I'm not now. Back in Seattle.
All righty.
Wintry Seattle.
Wintry, yeah, it's snowing here actually today too. Just little flakes of snow. Anywho, some fact check first of all. I was talking about Melanie, who sings a brand new pair of roller skates. Melanie, is the person who sings brand new pair of roller skates, and I've got a link here to that. But did we not talk about that last week?
Yeah, we didn't have her name because we were talking about Maria Muldaur and
Maria Muldaur, yeah. Diana Muldaur.
No, not Diana Muldaur.
Yeah.
Back down the rabbit hole.
I wonder if Maria Muldaur's ever been on Star Trek. I doubt it. But, there you go. And then Xavier asked, how many Star Treks are there? So I took it upon myself to go look. And what was I? Oh, I was watching the Center Seat, and of course, Gates McFadden rattled off the number. And of course, it was pre-recorded, so they didn't have all the Prodigy stuff in there because they said, and coming soon, Prodigy, kind of thing, right? And we know we're already 5 episodes in, or 4 episodes, depending on which way you look at it. 6 today, right? So there are, I added them up. There have been 826 items that have aired or appeared in a theater at some point. 79 the original series shows, 22 animated series, 6 original cast movies, 4 next generation movies, 107 seasons of TNG, which is 176 episodes, 7 seasons of DS9, which is 173 episodes. I don't know how they do their math. 168 episodes of Voy. We had 4 seasons of Enterprise, which was 97 episodes, and then we had 4 seasons of Disco so far, and that counts for 53. And I don't know if that counts the ones that we haven't seen yet, because IMDb lists the ones that have been inked or whatever. I just said Discovery, right? 2 seasons of Picard so far, only 21 according to IMDb, but only 10 of them have aired. We've only had 1 season of Picard so far. And we had 2 seasons of Lower Decks. We've seen 20, even though IMDb lists 30 of them. We had 3 Kelvin timeline movies and 21 Prodigy according to IMDb, but we've only seen 5 or 6 aired, depending on how you look at it. But I also added we had 10 short treks, which wasn't being counted for some reason. Remind me again, why are we calling it the Kelvin timeline? I know it's a different timeline, but why Kelvin?
Is it the USS Kelvin that?
That crashes.
Thor, Kirk's dad was on.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, because that's
what creates the paradox. Yeah.
He runs into the bad guy because his dad does die that way, doesn't he? Or no, I guess he doesn't die that way.
Nope.
I thought Kirk's dad died somehow. Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I thought he went down with the ship. Did he not go down with the ship? Well, while the wife gave birth to Kirk on a escape pod or something.
That's what happens in the movie.
Yeah. But I'm trying to remember if that's what happens in the timeline because,
Yeah, I don't think so. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I seem to recall that not being the case.
All right. Well, more fact check for next week.
More fact check, yeah. Bad Star Trek fans, here we are.
Yeah, okay. And then I was talking last week about a Chinese sci-fi film. I couldn't remember the name of it. It's called The Silent Sea. And then this next point is something else. And I mentioned last week that 60 million people were watching I Love Lucy during the run of the show. I'm not sure exactly which one that is, but I looked it up. In 1962, the population of the United States was 192 million. So 60 million is roughly 30%, which is still a lot of people watching a TV show. Considering that, a lot of people didn't even have TVs, right? So
yeah, that's two modern day Canadas watching I Love Lucy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right?
So,
Since
yeah,
I measure things in Canadas to make math easy.
That's a metric unit, though.
Yeah. Modern USA is roughly 11 Canadas to make it easy.
Oh really? Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, because we're 330 million. So
True. Oh wow, you are
roughly right. I mean, it's probably slightly off that, but. Does anybody know? It's just fact check as well. How big was Canada back in 1962 by comparison?
I don't know. I have to go back to that site and see if I can figure it out. Hang on a second. Oh, it's funny that.
I'll have you know, Jaime, we're up to 35 million. 35.
Oh, I'm gonna have to adjust.
You're gonna have to adjust for inflation.
Google here says it was 18.61 million in 1962.
Yeah, so it's doubled
Canada?
since then.
Wow.
Yeah,
We've been busy beavers.
Well, we have a lot of immigration.
That's true. Yeah. It's all the Timbits. They keep coming for Timbits.
Or the Tim Biebs, as the case may be.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I did manage to get myself a box of Tim Biebs and put them up on the shelf. I ate them, but I put the box on the shelf.
Yeah.
All right. And Jaime, you got something here on the fact check about a nanoprobe?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys referenced this at all in previous episodes because those are still queued up in my podcast list.
You don't listen to our show religiously? What?
the queue got huge as I was sort of just stuck at home or stuck from going out for a while. But I think I had joked, at least in our private messages, that I was getting the Borg nanoprobes treatment. So if folks don't remember what those are, it was the monoclonal antibodies is what I was talking about. But it sort of felt like the nanoprobes, especially the ones that were treating, if you remember Scorpion parts 1 and 2 from Voyager, when species 8472 has this weird infectious thing that causes problems, and they end up using Borg modified nanoprobes to defeat the sort of like virulent nature of 8472.
Yeah,
and turned it into a weapon.
All right. Cool. All right. Anyway, so in the headlines here, first one up is for me, we got 10 movies from Mashable that they can't wait to see. So we just thought I'd talk about them real quick. The 10 movies are Scream. Apparently there's a new Scream. Is this a remake or do we know? He said like
the never-ending Scream film.
Yeah. Because what's her name? The woman that's in all of them?
Oh, Neve Campbell.
Neve Campbell. Yeah. Right. So,
trailer makes it seem like it's a continuation.
That's true. David Arquette's in it. Courtney Cox is in it.
Yep.
There you go. All right. Jackass Forever. Like we need another Jackass movie.
Forever.
That's coming. Forever. Yeah. Moonfall is a sort of science fiction-y...
it's a Roland Emmerich disaster movie is what it is.
Is that the Independence guy?
Oh, yes. No. Yes. If it blows up good, Roland Emmerich's involved, and apparently this is the most Roland Emmerich of the Roland Emmerich movies.
I thought there was Dean Devlin. Is that not... Is he not Independence Day, or is he the producer or director, whatever?
Yeah. It's possible that somebody else is, involved, but man.
Right. Okay. Marry Me, I'm not sure what that is. It looks like, is that J-Lo?
That is J-Lo.
It does look like J-Lo.
With Owen Wilson. You guys didn't watch the trailers? I watched the trailers. So,
oh, man. There's a reason why I don't watch some trailers,
So this one is a romantic comedy where J-Lo is a pop star who is going to get married on stage to her longtime boyfriend or something in some Marry Me song or something, right? Except the boyfriend cheats on her, so she no longer wants to get married to him. And Owen Wilson gets convinced as a normal civilian to go to this concert. And he has a little sign that says, "Marry me." And she's like, I'll marry you. And apparently they're going to get married. Like that's the sort of concept there. It does look like delicious trash. I might end up watching this if it ends up on a streaming service. Because I watched this, I was like, this is... if folks have heard, and it's kind of hard to describe this in an audio medium versus visual, but like people normally think of bad and good as being on a linear scale. They're actually on a circular scale, right? I think this is so bad it loops back around to good.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Number 5, Uncharted, which we've talked about before on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan are both fans of Uncharted. Have you played Uncharted, Jaime?
I have, although I think I'm going to have to go back and take a look and make absolutely sure, because there's been several Uncharteds, and there's also been, I feel like I caught myself in one of the other episodes where I'd said, oh yeah, it's this one where you can end the game really quick, and I think that's a different game. Oh, I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, the scene in the trailer of the two pilot ships in the cave is literally lifted right out of the game in the first episode of that game.
Yeah.
Number 6 movie, The Batman.
Meh.
Starring, what's his name? I was going to say Gilroy. What was his name in
Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, no, but in Harry Potter, he had a different name.
Oh, Cedric Diggory. Yeah.
Cedric Diggory, yes, that's Cedric Diggory. And then The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. No idea what that is.
That's why you got to watch the trailer. So it stars Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
The most Nicolas Cage movie ever.
Yeah, I watched that movie Pig the other day, just for FYI, just to see what the fuss was about. Starring everybody's favorite actor, Nicolas Cage. Yeah. Number 8, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I thought we just watched in Spider-Man.
No, that was Spider-Man in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. Oh, this is the next one is called Nope. I didn't watch the trailer. Jaime, what's this one about?
He's trolling here because in this article, all we have is an ominous poster showing a cloud floating over a village with what looks like a string of flags coming out of it, as the article describes. That's all we know. It's by Jordan Peele. So,
but that's why people are excited, right? Because after Get Out and Us, which were both smashes, I think everyone's looking to see what Jordan Peele comes up next to scare people's pants off.
Right. And of course, number 10, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1.
Yeah. We'll see how that one turns up when we get to our Spockies Awards later on.
Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse was the previous version. So, yeah. I thought people were getting confused when I first watched the Spockies numbers come in, but it seems I was incorrect. They seem to have found their sense of logic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so over to Jonathan with this one. Good news about Ontario theaters.
Yeah, well, maybe not. So luckily, over the holidays, we were able to sneak in to see Spider-Man, the Spider-Man No Way Home film. So Tim and Xavier and I went to go see it. We were lucky enough to find a daytime screening with a whopping 10 people, including us, in the theater for 300 plus. So that felt safe enough that we did do that. And yeah, it was great. It was a great movie. We really enjoyed it. And Tim managed to get out as well to see The Matrix and then The Matrix Resurrections. But the opportunity to get out and see a movie here in Ontario has come to an end because the Omicron variant of COVID is going on so rapidly through this area that they have closed all concert venues, all movie theaters, no more indoor dining, all kinds of restrictions in place. And so if you didn't get a chance to see those movies in the theater, I think you are SOL for the short term, because it's at least 3 weeks is what they're saying. It's probably more likely well into February. Logically, again, that's obviously I'm not working on the science board here, but it seems very unlikely that you'll be able to get out and see those movies again. Whether or not that will impact whether or not the same movies that are playing now will come back and be in the theaters in the future, so you can see them again. I don't know if you're, by the time movie theaters come back, if you're still going to be able to see, Spider-Man on a big screen, or if it's going to be moved on. But yeah, so bad news on that front, but it is probably for the best, given that the numbers here in Ontario in particular are particularly high. Jaime, I don't know if you know how things are doing in your jurisdiction, if they've gone to that kind of move yet.
A lot of it's so hard to think about it. The States, the United States isn't a bad place too. We're not locking down like you all are. That's not to say that we shouldn't also do similar things, but I'm not aware of anything there. There's still the fight at the federal level around vaccine mandate for companies that have employees of 100 people or more. It looks like that probably will pass through the judicial review. So companies are preparing for that. But it's, Omicron has caused some, work meetings, and I'm looking at conferences and stuff that are like already switching to virtual only for at least the first half of the year, it looks like. I think folks will cross their fingers and hope for things in the latter half of the year. But let's be honest, I don't think it's going to get that much better after the summer months.
Yep. And your very lucky pass is finally expired, right? So you were getting all the Warner Brothers movies through your HBO Max subscription. That was just for last year, right? It doesn't carry over to this calendar year?
As far as I know, I don't think Warner Brothers is doing anything to continue that. And that actually makes me wonder if I should check my subscriptions. I was busy with Omicron. I have not looked to see when my HBO Max. Hold on, I'm checking on my phone real time here. When is that?
Next billing date for an extra month, or
no? Next billing date is January 25th. So I need to go in and cancel HBO Max here. Not right now. Right now, I'll double check.
Lopez Factor Part 1 or Calculus Part 2.
Because really, all there is the Peacemaker TV show, which I'm sure it'll be fun. I think I described it as like the most American looking thing ever, where he has a literal bald eagle as his sidekick. I think I can wait to binge something and watch that at the same time, right?
So you don't know why we called last episode the Lopez calculus, right?
No, I have not listened to the past 2 episodes. They're in my queue. So no, I don't. Is it all related to streaming services and how you calculate out what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. HBO Max is coming off the list here before January 25th.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and I've got a link here. Just we have our famous premier of Ontario gave a speech the other day about how he's really sorry that he has to close everything down, and he thought he's looked at it for like 6 hours and decided to make the decision. And Brittlestar is a marketing dude here in Toronto, does these really deadpan sarcastic videos, and he does a double speak. Every sentence has 2 meanings in what he says, and he basically replays his interpretation of what Doug Ford said, and it's like I spent all weekend and made a decision I probably should have made in December, and so on and so forth. But he says it much better than that. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes for your entertainment pleasure.
And for those of our listeners who are American, a premier is a governor.
Oh, true. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's helpful.
As opposed to a prime minister. That's
premier is the head official of our province, so same as a governor would be to a state.
Right.
All right. Next up, speaking of movie going, the first movie casualty due to the Omicron surge has been Morbius, the Sony Pictures vampire flick set in the Spider-Verse, because it was supposed to be coming out in theaters on January 28th. Obviously, in some jurisdictions, movie theaters are closed. In other ones, people are reticent to go. So it has been bumped from the 28th of January till April Fool's Day, April 1st. It's coming out. I'm not sure how to feel about that particular timing, but this is the first, and I'll be really interested to see over the short term. Obviously, there's different calculations on when things are going to start waning as opposed to waxing. So it'll be interesting to see if any other movies have to get shoved out to make room for the virus. But for now, the first one that's going to get the shove is Morbius. Not that I think, maybe, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I don't think that was on our go to the movie theater and see list.
No, don't think so. That's the Tom Hardy one?
No, Tom Hardy's the Venom one. This is the Jared Leto one. And I'll be fair, the trailer doesn't look bad. It looks like it's certainly a watchable movie. I just don't know that I would go to the theater to see it. I'd probably watch it when it comes to an on-demand or a streaming service.
Okay, cool.
Next up, so we had mentioned that Tim had gone to go see Matrix Resurrections. Did you watch that on your subscription, Jaime?
That was the final movie to watch on the HBO Max subscription. So
you completed your game card?
Completed the... Wait, did I literally watch everything? I have to take a look back and see what they offered up. But at least the marquee movie for each month I watched.
Yeah. So Matrix Resurrections was, people weren't sure, is this the start of a new thing? Are they going to do more? How's it going to go? So this week we got a little bit of information. So the producer said this week that he doesn't anticipate it coming back. James McTeague said he told Collider that there are no plans to develop any further movies. For us, I think at the moment, it's just the movie you've seen. We've got no prequel in mind. We've got no sequel in mind. We've got no further trilogy. So that's fairly definitive. And then they've got a second story here where Keanu Reeves said pretty much the same thing, that he doesn't see... if I had to cast a ballot, no, not a ballot, a vote, I would say that Lana would not do another Matrix. But yeah, so it doesn't sound like that is going to happen. So
are we waiting to see what George Lucas has to say about it, though?
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of time, if there's going to be any more Matrix movies, or if this was just sort of the last hurrah of the Matrix. I have not had a chance to see it yet. You both have. If this is the last we see of the Matrix, was it a satisfying ending to all the Matrices?
Yeah, in a manner of speaking, it was. I think, they kind of deal with the sort of replay aspect of Neo having gone through that trial several times in his past, and in this case in the future. So they kind of like, I think it's like, it's like there's more than one multiverse, kind of deal. In this case there's more than one timeline for Neo, so I could there's no reason to say it couldn't come back in the future. With Keanu Reeves, I would say probably not. With Carrie-Anne Moss, I would say probably not, but there's no reason why somebody couldn't take the idea and do a Matrix The Next Generation in 10 years, with starring Cedric Diggory, or something like that.
Yeah, they'll just start changing the role around like James Bond or something else.
Yeah, I mean I think they play around with the rules in this one. They do a really good job of playing around with the sort of the rules and the timeline. It starts right off with hey, this isn't supposed to be the way it's supposed to be, and then it kind of goes from there. So it without giving too much away, it is entertaining. If you're into the first Matrix, it's good. To be honest with you, and I'm a huge fan of the first Matrix. I'm not a big fan of the third Matrix movie. I found it went a little too far, but. Yeah, I think as the story goes, The Matrix 1.0 was really good, and this is sort of a revisit to the 1.0 thing with a little bit of the second and third movie mixed in, but not much, So
and I like Jaime's take on this too.
Yeah, I think it works okay as an action movie. It works better as a sort of meta commentary on how Matrix 4 even came to exist. So when you end up watching it, if you watch it with that eye, I think it will make sense more as, I don't remember Lana's sister's name off the top of my head, but it feels like at least Lana's cathartic moment for this big part of their life.
Yeah, and I sort of said they kind of play with the idea at the beginning of the movie, and that it could have all been in Mr. Anderson's head, right? And that could be, because they never really do resolve that, right? But because it does have that sort of play, like how in my favorite movie of all time, Brazil, right? How it has a good ending and it has a real ending,
Mm-hmm.
And you're never really sure what did it really end, or is the guy still sitting in the chair with a silly grin on his face, kind of thing, right? So, yeah, I mean, it does end, but the questions of whether which is the real world, the Matrix or the real world, is kind of like that's open for debate. So I mean, as a sort of vehicle or a sort of a template for future movies or future stories, I could totally see it going in several different directions, right?
Lily, by the way, is the other Wachowski sister, Lily and Lana.
Lily, thank you.
Yep. All right. Well,
I find it funny that I was flipping through Crave the other day. I turned out I have access to Crave, and I went to the women, or the movies made by women, and it's like women who acted, women who wrote the stories, women who directed, and of course they put the Matrix movies in. That's
a weird one, because I think we talked
weren't
briefly,
women when they made them.
Like, yeah, we talked briefly about what are they going to do with. I'm so bad on this. I can't remember Ellen Page's. Is it Aaron?
Elliot,
thank you.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do there, and how does something like an IMDb handle that? It's not clear. I can make arguments for both sides.
Yeah, I had a similar issue. There's a book series, an independent book series that I really like, called Wet Moon, and graphic novels, and it was drawn and written by Ross Campbell. Ross, after doing the series, transitioned and is now Sophie. And so Sophie, they've republished the books with credited to Sophie, not credited to Ross, and they put them in the LGBTQ plus 2S plus section of bookstores. And it's kind of a strange one because Sophie was Ross when the books were created. So now, like, I think if Sophie's creating new work, that makes sense to me. But Sophie was presenting as a man at that point. I find it a little bit confusing to group it that way. I don't know that's inappropriate. I just found it a little bit of an unusual quandary that had never really come up before.
Well, and this is the thing, is like we talk about this a lot. I think we talked about this, I don't know if I put it in the air or not, but about the Spockies, like how we have a best woman, best man, and then where do you put people like Blue Del Barrio, right? Yeah. The thing about it is, though, as I'm clearly, I don't know what you called it, a cis male or heterosexual male myself, right? And so I don't know what it's like, but I mean, I do know from listening to people tell their stories that they may be a man when they're young and they're creating work or whatever, but they feel like they're a woman, even though they haven't become out, or and they may have realized it as a teenager, right? And then they decide, when they're like older, okay, I'm just going to do that. Because transitioning wasn't really a cool thing until recently, it was kind of an edge thing. But, and my issue as a feminist is that, people who it's too convenient to put them in, to try to give credit to a writing that was done by a male person who had all the benefits of being a male in society, to now put them into the bucket with women who clearly have to struggle. I mean, like, how many actors, like DC Fontana, couldn't even use a real name when she was writing for Star Trek because she couldn't be taken seriously, So that whole sort of struggle that women have gone through to get recognition and get appreciation and all that kind of stuff throughout society. I mean, like, you can go back like 100 years and look at artists. You can go back 500 years and look at architects, who were, working as women in a man's world, right? So I find it kind of, convenient that we can put these people into these new buckets and not think about, well, what about, it's like knocking down statues and saying there was no slavery, there was.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, though. And again, this is I think the world where J.K. Rowling got herself into some issues with the way that she sort of describes the struggles of women versus the struggles of trans women. It's a very, very touchy subject. Like, some people view that as separate issues. Some people view trans rights as women's rights, and some people take it very, very seriously that those are identical things, and some feel very strongly that they aren't. And it's very, very tricky.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's an interesting debate, especially in this. We're talking about pop culture and pop culture media and stuff. And
well, I mean, I think you absolutely need it. Like, Elliot Page is an excellent actor, and he could absolutely, and put on a performance that is worthy of an award and should be nominated as best actor. But I know that there would certainly be some pockets of society that would be like, well, that's how is that the right thing, and blah 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 blah, whatever their political views are on gender politics and everything else. It's
Well, even if you go back to Shakespeare and look at this, or even the Greek theater, right? I think in Shakespeare's time, women weren't actors either, right? I mean, they generally it was men like who got in drag and acted and played out the female parts, right? I mean, so there's been this whole sort of inequality, for centuries, right? Yeah. Anyway,
but we digress.
Although Yeah, we digress. Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, Jaime started it. Who invited him anyway?
Always bringing the heat. Jaime Lopez Jr.
Yeah, off the top ropes. Yep, there we go. So one more time with Jonathan.
Yep. So the last thing I've got in the headlines this week is that there's a story from the good folks at the Wall Street Journal that Warner Brothers and Viacom CBS, who have a joint stake in the CW, are contemplating selling it. This is particularly interesting because Warner Brothers is the house of DC Comics, and of course the CW is the house of DC Comics on television. There is, has been and are continuing to be so many different shows. Arrow and Supergirl obviously have finished their runs, but there's still The Flash. We had the Black Lightning show that's come and gone. Stargirl. Naomi is premiering next week. There's a ton of different shows. Of course, Batwoman, Superman and Lois, Legends of Tomorrow. So the question becomes, if they decide they're going to part with this thing, what does that mean for its continued future of the DC, the Arrowverse, if you will, on television? Because whether or not they would continue to want to license those things there, or they would migrate those things over to HBO Max and Paramount Plus, where they have more desire for unique content. So this will be an interesting one to watch to see if this is something that they're going to do, and if they do, what it means, because it could mean a big shakeup in the status quo of DC Comics rights on television.
Oh, so Viacom CBS is Paramount, or I'm confused.
Yes. Viacom CBS owns CBS Television and the entire Star Trek library and Paramount Plus.
Okay, right.
So yeah, this could have a pretty big impact on. It's been a decade. I mean, a decade so far since the Arrowverse started, of DC Comics properties performing, reasonably well on the CW. It'd be a pretty big shakeup if they didn't have those to fill their lineups every week.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, because up here we don't get CW, we get something different, right?
Yeah, we can get CW if you have an advanced cable package, but they tend to just split up the rights to different things. So some of it ends up on CTV Sci-Fi, some of it ends up on Netflix. There are different avenues for where you can get it. Netflix is the real pain in the buttocks because they insist upon putting it up 2 days after it premieres in the United States. So if they're doing a multi-parter event crossover, you're a little stuck.
Okay. Well, guess what, folks? It's that time of the show when we start looking into something Star Trek shaped, Star Trek shaped. This time we're back to Prodigy. Welcome back to Prodigy, season 1, episode 6, and Jaime's going to do the recap on Kobayashi. No longer Kobayashi Maru, by the way.
It's so weird coming back to Prodigy, which took a weird mid-season hiatus to go to Discovery, which was taking its own.
They had to drive 4,000 light years, so they needed to a couple of months, right?
Yeah, apparently. And that's actually where we end up starting, right off the end of the previous episode, where they had used the Protostar's proto drive to escape from the villain, the Diviner. We end up on the tail end of that, where they've been thrown, or I should say they've traveled 4,000 light years in a very short flight. And so the crew's sort of got some time to sort of deal with that, right? Hollow Janeway says that they started in the Delta Quadrant and then sort of trails off without saying where did they end up? Which direction did they go? How far is 4,000 light years? So I don't know if I missed something in the episode, if they said specifically which quadrant they're in now.
She didn't. No,
she didn't. Okay, good. I wasn't bad at listening then, so that's good. So this gives the crew sort of several different things to do, right? So let's see if I can keep track of all the different sort of threads in my head. So I'll start with the easiest one, and that is Rock Talk and Murph being the like slime alien one, where he is like going around and doing stuff on the ship and swallows a whole bunch of grenades. And apparently is invulnerable or something because he didn't blow up. He just sort of belched out the contents of that. So that makes Rock Talk think that Murph is indestructible, which I feel like was in here to set things up for the future in some way, right? Like,
or just the fact that they think they can put something in Murph if they're in a crisis that will not kill him but might save them.
Yeah, so I feel like this will come up. Store this one in your memory here, that like this will be important, because otherwise, besides being a little of kiddie fun, I'm like, this feels like it had a purpose.
100%.
Right? So it was a very short one, fun, light one, but longer term, I think that will have some ramifications. You've got sort of the main part of this episode is dealing with his name Dal, and
yep.
We've talked about his character, how he's not ready to be a captain because he doesn't display captainly qualities, and he's really only captain because he declared himself to be so. That comes to a head in this episode where like the entire crew is like, we need to go find the Federation. He's the only holdout that says, well, we kind of stole their ship. Isn't that a bad idea? And they're like, no, come on, man, they're going to be cool. And he ends up making his way over with Jankum Pog, who he boots out eventually into the holodeck, and they're going through the Kobayashi Maru test, which for longtime Star Trek fans is the hopefully well-known no-win scenario thing of like, there's the Kobayashi Maru, it's in trouble, oh no, it's wandered its way into the neutral zone between the Federation and the Klingon Empire, so you're kind of screwed, right? Except this goes off into some weird fan service where you can assemble like the mightiest crew you might possibly want. So they have Spock, Uhura, they have Odo, Dr. Crusher. Did I miss somebody? Scotty eventually.
That's later.
That's later, but yep, so that's Scotty. And Dal just keeps failing. What is it, like 90 times or something like that? Just like a Boimler level of retries, except rather than going for a perfect score, he was like just trying to pass on this. And it's fun because they used the real voices, right? It looks like it was clipped from various episodes and stuff.
Well, except for one. One of them was a new voice.
One of them? Which one was the new voice?
Gates McFadden came back to reprise her role as Dr. Crusher because there were some parts that had to be specific. And so Gates McFadden came back and did a recording session to do some original parts the first time she's played that role in 20 years.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. I assumed that they had stitched it together from other things there too. So,
yep.
The Spock thing was, Spock had a lot of lines in this, and it became obvious after a while that they were just
100%,
the movies. Yeah.
But I was sort of listening and trying to sort of figure out, is this all, 'cause, obviously several of the people that they cast had passed on, but I was wondering how they were going to have the interactions. But I think the reason why Dr. Crusher sits in the number one's chair is because she actually is interacting more directly and has some actual things to say to him specifically in those moments.
Michelle Nichols didn't come back and do Uhura?
No.
Didn't really say much. Okay.
No.
Yeah. So it's fun seeing the scenario. It's take place to remix everything. It's on a Galaxy class. Not clear if it's the Enterprise D, but it's certainly a Galaxy class bridge and everything. So it's fun there watching him sort of eventually realize that it's a no-win scenario, even as he does the like pro gamer move at the end where
that was great.
Like, okay,
total chaos.
We're gonna dump our warp core and then we're gonna shoot it. They go.
Comes back to how easy it is to eject a warp core scenario from lower decks, right?
Yeah. He and Spock beam over and they start neck pinching and phasering the Klingons, and just when it seems like he's won, he accidentally torpedoes the Galaxy class ship and loses. So that was a lot of fun, and it was, I think, a nice way to introduce. Again, remember this audience, is intended to be Nickelodeon age folks. So there are people new to the world who have not heard of Star Trek. So this is helping
or holodecks
them. And so introducing the crew, which introduces the audience to holodecks and what that means. Introduces iconic characters from past series, even if they don't know exactly who they are, kids latch on to the imagery and be like, oh, I know that person, and they see them on Paramount Plus or something, right? So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. And then the other sort of track that they have going on that has sort of interesting implications for the future is we get more interaction between Zero and Gwyn, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Going over, trying to figure out what exactly was this ship, the Protostar's mission, and Hollow Janeway is trying to say what the mission is, and then sort of glitches out and realizes that information is classified. We see information about the diviner, who apparently 17 years in the past, which people on the internet were confused about this. And for me, I'm like, this is Star Trek. I think I know what happened. But 17 years in the past, the diviner was aware of the existence of a ship called the Protostar and had been looking for it for some time. Ends up deciding to birth a daughter, which is Gwyn, from like his own genetic material, like in a weird cloning kind of artificial process. And this is throwing people for a loop because the setting for Prodigy is 5 years after Voyager returned, so 2383. People are like, yo, if it was 17 years ago, that's actually like 12 years before Voyager was lost. How can there be a Hollow Janeway and all this stuff? I'm like, well, okay, this is Star Trek. Timey-wimey's probably involved, and it feels like it's really punctuated when we get to the end, and I'll get there. But this part of the track seemed to be setting the stage for, okay, there's this weird mystery. Why does the Protostar exist? Why is its mission classified? What exactly was the diviner looking for? And sort of filling out more of the stage for the future here. And that leads us to the sort of tail end where they retrieve enough of the information to see a distress recording from the sort of the final days of the Protostar before it got lost, presumably, that says, Mayday, Mayday, this is Captain Chakotay, from the USS Protostar requesting assistance. So I think for me, this is in speculation and not recap mode. I'm like, it feels like obviously the Protostar comes from the future. Right.
Oh, right.
It feels like it's long enough in the future where they've done the the Hall of Presidents sort of thing with Janeway and be like, here, Hollow Janeway's treat people, and explain why the Protostar has such cool advanced technology that we haven't quite seen in any Star Trek stuff. And it feels like it helps fit that timeline of the 17 years thing, where I think we get information that Gwyn and her father, the diviner, are like the last two people of their race. It's like not a race we've seen before. So I'm kind of suspecting they come from some future time.
So wait, why are you saying this takes place just around the same time as Voyager, like the whole show?
I ended up looking that up just because I know we had talked about it at some point. Because we've been doing the Discovery.
They give a star date when Diviner's deciding to have a child, right?
Well, going from the first episode, somewhere in there, or maybe in the premise that we've read somewhere, it takes place like a handful of years. I want to say it's like 5 years after Voyager returned. So that gives us it's vaguely close to Star Trek Lower Decks time, right?
Okay.
I think. Well, I could be wrong.
I thought it was like way in the future, like so far that they don't even know where things are, right? Mind you, they're in the Delta Quadrant.
I thought it was closer, right? But we might have to fact check that one. But if it's further away from Lower Decks, then the 17 years is totally fine. It can't be too far away, though, given that there is a Captain Chakotay. Now, granted, we don't see him in full color. We can't see, how old of a gentleman he is.
No, it's an image. Yeah, it's a...
but they lived like 150-ish in that era, so it kind of gives us a time box as to where that would be.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah,
and given the level of complexity that we're talking about here, do you not feel like this is going to fly like 90 miles over the average Nickelodeon kid's head?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Like I didn't think this was a bad episode. I thought that the Murph storyline and the Dal storyline were very straightforward and exactly what we come to expect from Prodigy so far, which is fun little adventures that definitely educate a younger audience on the Star Trek universe. These are some of the big characters. These are some of the situations. This is how a holodeck works. This is what the Kobayashi Maru is. These are some famous characters. That all made sense to me. The larger overarching arc where they're trying to figure out, the what the protostar is and where it's from, that stuff felt like quantum math. It felt like a much higher level thing. And obviously they don't have to, they can just gobbledygook their way through it, and that's fine. But I wonder if that is a potential alienation for the uninitiated.
Well, I'm going to use Jaime's math and say that I'm probably about 15 Nickelodeons older than in scale. And I was confused by how come the password for the encryption was the same as, like, from her language.
Well, and that, I think, speaks to the time issue, right?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like obviously it was in his possession, or he parked it there or something. Like her father, the diviner, must have had at some point possession of this thing, right? Yeah. Because no, he's looking for it.
Well,
too,
and he knew which planet to look on for it too, right? Like, he knew it was there. He just didn't know
like
where.
Pirate treasure. He left it behind, maybe. Or
so it's coming together. But I mean, to me, this whole stuff that we're talking about, as far as the timey-wimey stuff, that this makes it far more interesting to me. Although, man, if Star Trek could avoid just doing time travel stories, wow. But it is definitely makes the story a little less juvenile, frankly.
Right. Yeah.
I think, Jonathan, that's a good point you bring up. I am looking back into media that I enjoyed as a kid and thinking about, I enjoyed it in a much different way when I was smaller. And I'm going to pick on Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, both 80s movies, where when I think about what was I really interested in as a kid, what did I replay, with my toys or stuff a lot. And it was that sort of action sequences, right? The Ghostbusters actively fighting a ghost. The time machine, trying to go back in time with the lightning bolt and stuff. So I think kids can glom on to things without sort of fully knowing or caring about the rest of the talky talk stuff and be totally fine enjoying. I think that might be happening here, where I think about, again, Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. I'm like, oh, when I watch these as an adult, yeah, of course, obviously I still enjoy the action, but I'm way more interested in the, like, weird interpersonal stuff between Marty McFly and his teenage parents. And for Ghostbusters, I'm like weirdly more interested in the, turns out the economy was really rough in the United States in the 1980s. And these guys were just like, they're just rat catchers, essentially, right? It happens to be ghosts, but it's like really about several academic elites who are forced to do blue collar jobs, which is not at all what I cared about or even thought about as a kid. Yeah. So I think, and obviously we don't, I think have anyone the right age to sort of ask for that, like little kids. But I'd be hopeful that the kids can still enjoy, like, Murph swallowing photon grenades and stuff. Yep. And going, yay, and buying their toys and playing. And then the adults who are watching with them enjoying this sort of like, oh, wait, there's like actually something deeper happening here. And maybe those kids, when they get older and rewatch this, be like, oh, dude, there was like a totally coherent storyline going through these episodes. And I was just like, yay, phasers. Oh, Jenkin Pog's eating weird stuff,
Well, do we want kids eating photon torpedoes or whatever he was eating? Like,
photon grenades?
Is that something? Yeah. That's something we want to promote.
Yeah.
Kids, if you're listening to this podcast, don't eat photon grenades.
Yeah, don't do that at home. So ask your parents before you eat photon grenades.
And also, maybe just this is going to come from a Canadian perspective, but lock up your photon grenades. Don't leave them lying around for the space goo aliens to eat. That's bad parenting / pet ownership.
Can we have a quick sidebar?
Yes.
Sure.
So I was talking to Nicole at work today about I raised a question which I've raised many times before, and the Marty McFly you brought in Back to the Future, so that's where this comes from. So I blame you again. But the whole quandary I had at the end of episode 2 of Back to the Future 2, where they leave the girlfriend and Einstein on the front porch, right? And And then they go back at the end of the third movie, and they retrieve her from the front porch, and she's just been happily sleeping there while Marty and I'm going to call him Rick, but Marty and Doc Brown have gone and changed all the parameters, and the universe has changed several times over, right? And Nicole pointed out, and I got to go back and watch this, that she was watching it the other day, and they, like, Doc Brown has a Rick Sanchez moment where Marty says, "But why did you knock her out? What are you doing?" And he's like, "She knows too much. There's no way anybody can know that much about their future. Like, it's just going to be bad, and that's why he knocks her. Like, literally almost like Rick Sanchez would do it, right? And that, I have to go back and watch the movie now, but that, or she said, that explains why, why it works, that this whole parallel universe, messing with the timeline kind of thing works, and that in fact, it is the same girlfriend in the end of the third movie. Are you guys convinced? No?
Just trying to piece all this together.
Yeah. Well, apparently, like when Marty asks him, "Why did you knock her out?" He has a Rick Sanchez moment and explains that nobody can know that much about their future, sort of thing. And that's why he did it. Anyway, end of sidebar.
All right. I'm going to let that percolate for a bit.
Yeah.
All right. Are we done with Star Trek? Shall we move on to Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, it's
sure.
The Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm really curious to hear Jaime's thoughts. So last week we talked about when we had our special guest, my son Xavier joined us for a couple of weeks while Jaime was recovering, and so we talked about the first episode of Book of Boba Fett last week, and my opinion was that it was not a killer premiere. I thought it was great. It's nice to be back in the Star Wars universe because we hadn't seen any Star Wars for several months. And, certainly some cool moments, but it really was not a huge hook. So this week we continued our sort of two-track storytelling where one is set in the present, one is set in the past. The present is Boba Fett is recovering from being attacked in the first episode. He goes into town to confront the mayor, who turns out to be an Icthorian, a hammerhead, if you will, and goes in and sort of says, hey, you answer to me, don't mess with me, whatever. And there's sort of this, conflict between them. He steps outside and then has this big showdown with two members of the Hutt family, and it's Jabba's niece and nephew who are being held up on their litter and have this sort of showdown of, this is our town, no wait, this is my town, I claimed it, no wait, it's ours by right. And so they have this sort of showdown, and Boba backs them down, but we get an amazing cameo in this moment too, where we got to see a character from the comic books over the past few years, which was amazing. So the Wookiee that comes out with the big spike shoulder pads, the black Wookiee, that's Black Kirsantan, and he's a character that has been around for about 6 or 7 years in the In Continuity comic book series, and he is just a monster, an absolute vicious, bad Wookiee, very bad Wookiee. So I'm dying to see them let this character loose, because it's been a really, really cool one in the comics. But first, now brought over to live action, and I'd like to thank the people at Disney / Star Wars for doing this, because when they do stuff like this, my comic collection just becomes more and more valuable, so I appreciate that. So anyways, they have this showdown, the Hutts back off and basically say this is not over. So now we've got Boba head to head with the mayor, who doesn't like him, head to head with the Hutts, who don't like him, and we're sort of left with that. We go back into Boba's past, and we see him with the Tusken people in what is pretty blatant Western homage, where he's taken in where he dances with wolves. He's taken in by the indigenous people of Tatooine. They nurse him back to health. He's been accepted into the tribe. He has this drug trip thing where he gets to well, first he helps them with the train robbery, right? So this train that whips through their territory and kills them constantly, traveling through their territory at high speed and picking them off, shooting these poor innocent banthas that are just standing there. And so two of them went down in very sad fashion. He says, I can fix this. So he goes into town, beats up a biker gang, steals all their bikes. They trains them how to use the bikes, the swoops rather, and then they basically stage the Great Train Robbery, which is another Western homage. And they do the train, they get on, they have this big fight scene. It's pretty well done. And then they stop the train. They bring the survivors off the train and basically say, hey, this is, Tusken territory. If you're going to go through the Tusken territory, you pay a tithe. If you don't pay the tithe, we're going to keep taking down your trains. And because he's done this, he's accepted into the tribe. They send him on this vision quest where they stick a lizard up his nose, and he has this like hallucinatory trip where he goes out into the desert and finds a piece of wood. They then turn that wood into his very own gaffy stick, and then they robe him, and then we see him very much as we saw him when he debuted in The Mandalorian, with his black robes, his gaffy stick, and sort of an honorary member of the tribe, as it were. And so two sort of the two-tier storyline thing is good, although they're spending sort of a lot of, like, they're not going back and forth. It's really sort of like one chunk and then another chunk.
Yeah, it's almost like, why bother? Like,
yeah, I almost wonder if you could have just told them like a whole episode of this and a whole episode. I don't know, it's just an interesting, unusual storytelling method.
Well, because what's interesting about it for me is that I ended up watching because of life in the universe and everything like that gets in the way sometimes. I ended up watching the first part, and then I got halfway through just about where they start attacking the train into the second part, but where I had to stop for like half an hour and then go back to it. And, so now as we're sitting down to sort of review it, I'm thinking to myself, I'd almost forgotten about the battle with the mayor and the twins, right? Mm-hmm. Because there was more meat in the train robbery thing, that whole development of, teaching the Tuskens how to. I mean, there's a lot of comedy and teaching them to ride those bikes or swoops, whatever you call them.
Yep.
And the banthas, by the way, when the banthas get killed, it's so that the Tuskens have something to hide behind as they shoot, right? That's what the purpose of that is.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the old westerns of hide behind your horse, right? But it's just so sad in both moments when they shoot. The banthas are sort of standing there and they just sort of drop like a sack full of carpets. It's really sad.
And it's then sort of establishes the idea that Boba Fett is not, he's more interested in the profit than, or making examples of people. Like, he doesn't just, go all Negan on them and take them out. He says, he convinces the leader that, you should walk back and tell your bosses that, if you want to run your train through here, you're going to have to pay us. And,
mm-hmm.
It's interesting how it would have developed that, and of course, the guy says we always thought that the Tuskens were just, what does he say, primitive or not, not civilized, right? Uncivilized.
Yeah, it's the old interpretation of indigenous peoples, right? They're savages.
Yeah, so the question is that I wonder why, like, what would have led them to the point where, like, when they drove their trains through, they would just take pot shots and take out the Tuskens. I mean, like,
I think they probably the Tuskens probably shot at them too, saying like, "This is our territory. Why are you flying through here with your thing? You can't just do that." And so, I'm sure there was probably instant acrimony.
True. I mean, because they do establish that in The Phantom Menace, your favorite movie.
I did think, though, there was one thing in here that I wanted to quickly raise before I get more of your thoughts. But one thing I thought they did a good job of in here, because after the first episode, I saw some criticism on social and on Reddit of people saying, it really does make Obi-Wan Kenobi look like an ass for the fact that he lived on Tatooine for ostensibly 20 plus years, and that he had an acrimonious relationship with the Tuskens that lived with him, right? That he had to scare them off by impersonating a crate dragon, and that that they attacked the locals and everything else. And people were like, man, this whole thing of like Boba coming in and like befriending them makes Obi-Wan's relationship with them look like really bad and outdated. But they did do a good little slip-in line in this episode where they said, some of the like when the great, the desert dried up and all our people were here, some of our groups, some of our tribes turned to violence. So I think what we're supposed to infer is that this particular group is not necessarily one of the more extremely violent groups of Tuskens, but there are some who have resorted to being more aggressive or more violent, and that we're supposed to assume that the ones that live closest to Obi-Wan, who smash Luke and smash C-3PO, are supposed to be one of the more violent groups. So I think that's a bit of a nice way to resolve that. It's nice when Reddit gets its comeuppance in like a week. Where they're like, oh, look at this, bad treatment, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the next week they're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, I feel like some of that fits into my impressions of the two different parts of the timeline that these episodes have swapped between, in that the part in the present day modern era feels like a mafia movie, right? Where
for sure,
where Boba Fett has taken over and he's fighting for turf with the other mobsters, right? And the local government sort of has to deal with the nonsense of the turf wars between the gangsters.
Well, the local government is a mobster too, right?
Yeah. So it all sort of fits in. It feels very like if you took away the Star Wars aspects of it, it would fit in Chicago, right? 1920s Chicago is what it feels like. And they've tied that to the hip to the stuff that takes place in the past with the Tuskens. That feels very Dances with Wolves.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And it that sort of fits in with the sort of like the Tusken Raiders, how like depending on how you're looking at them and who you're talking to, it's like, well, speaking from, America's very troubled history with our Native Americans, like right, wrong, or indifferent, probably the tribes you can name, like the Apache, the Comanche, etc., are the ones that showed up in a lot of Hollywood films and stuff, because those are the ones that fought the white man, right? So everybody knows their names. What people don't know is like the Anasazi or like other sort of lesser known ones who were just totally peaceful people who got wiped out by the white man, right? Like and I feel like that's kind of what they're doing here with Tusken Raiders, which is interesting, of like, oh, the ones that you saw that Obi-Wan Kenobi had a very bad view of, those apparently were the tribe that were fighting people, versus this tribe, which is kind of more, trying to live life on its own sort of thing. So I think that was pretty well done for the sort of line they're trying to skate here.
Yeah. The one thing that I felt after the first episode was that it was a little too slow a burn. And I also felt like they kind of rushed the escape from the Sarlacc thing. I really feel like that should have felt like more of an ordeal, although it certainly didn't look pleasant. I felt like it should have been more of an ordeal. I do feel like, this is only supposed to be a 7-episode series, but I do feel like it would have benefited from what we got from Hawkeye and what we've got from some of these previously, which is to do a debut of 2 episodes. I feel much more strongly invested after watching these 2 episodes than I did after watching the first one. I feel like that first one didn't hook well, but just a few more, again, the seeing the huts, getting a little bit more taste there, seeing a little bit more of the, seeing the cameo from the evil Wookiee, and then going right back to a stronger connection with the Tuskens. I feel stronger about this series after the second episode, and I assume I will continue to after 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, I feel like it was just a bit of a miss to not come in with 2 episodes, because I think it would have been a stronger debut.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's kind of an art to the way that they release these. I think this will play differently for folks who are binging this in the future and don't have the week-long gap, where I think you're quite right. Given that these are roughly half an hour episodes, if they had sort of smushed it together into an hour-long premiere, you probably would feel differently about the premiere than you did sitting here, 2021 sort of time frame. So that's not a bad idea, because I think comparing it to what I remember for the Mandalorian's first episode, that one just sort of ends with a bang of like, oh my God, what is this thing that has been revealed here? Right? We didn't have a a baby Jabba sort of reveal here to go with. We didn't have a baby Chewbacca or something or some other crazy thing. It kind of ended on a sort of normal note instead of a whoa cliffhanger note.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that The Mandalorian benefited from, even though it also had only half-hour first episode.
Well, and again, it ties back to the trick. It's tricky to tell that sort of two-tack storyline, right? Like, you're right. They're doing the gangster movie, they're doing the Western, but they really are keeping them kind of separate for now. It's hard to do that and then continue to weave in the hook points. Like, well, where are we going next with this? Oh, okay, we're going to take a break from that one. Okay, we're going to come back to this one. Oh, so yeah, it was hard to get too invested in either one of those tracks in such a short period of time. Again, and just the scope and scale. The first episode, the big sort of action scene was the assassins coming to try and kill Boba Fett. That scene was it was good, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this is the greatest spectacle I've ever seen. This one, between the show sort of street side showdown with the Hutts, and then also the huge train robbery, there was a lot sort of more exciting action and a little bit more sort of a crescendo for this thing, right? You made a really good point, Jaime. The first episode was only 38 minutes, and the second one was 52. So I think that's pretty telling too. I think this one benefited from having a little more time, and I think when you put them together, you get a really nice hour and a half start to the series. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm feeling I'm much happier after seeing episode 2 than I was after seeing episode 1. I wasn't trepidatious. They do a great job. This is all hands on deck. This is freaking, it's Robert Rodriguez doing the directing. I mean, we've got Jon Favreau, we've got Dave Filoni. Like, this is a murderer's row of incredibly talented people. A great cast. It's gonna be great. Like, I had no doubts. I just was a little off put by the first episode. Just wasn't really quite grabby, but yeah, I thought this was tremendous television, and I'm excited for more now.
Oh, good. And there's only 5 more episodes.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, we can jump into the Spockies, which we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. I just gotta find where's the. Okay, all right. Yeah, we just want to give thanks out to our. I'm going to call out, or maybe you can just rattle off the names as I go through them. Obviously, I voted first. I don't know who this one is. And Mark Rubin obviously gave it. Mark R at smapslap.com voted.
Yeah, I wrote down a list here. I'll read mine. Okay, so Sean, Kristen, Chris, Tim, Levon, Logan, Daryl, Matt, Jamie, and more. Thank you. And more. And many people who put in their email addresses, but we didn't ask them for their actual names, and I don't know all your email addresses. And yeah, Xavier, of course.
Xavier and Tammy and Jonathan.
Indira and yeah.
Yeah, so we got pretty much everybody.
So yes, good participation this year. Thank you all for taking a few minutes and playing along with us. It's always fun to see what people pick out.
Yeah, so just to start a commentary here, I've been watching the numbers grow over time because I'm the only one that's been able to see the results as they were coming in live, sort of thing, right? And so we can talk about this first movie, or the first category is the best movie, sci-fi or fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we have a 1, 2, and a 3, so you can see the numbers.
I do.
So what's number 1, Jonathan? What's number 1 movie?
All right, so the best movie, sci-fi fantasy for 2021 goes to Dune. Denis Villeneuve's Dune with 40.9% of the vote. Our runner-up is Spider-Man No Way Home with a little more than 16%, and Ghostbusters Afterlife with 13.6%.
Mm-hmm.
What else got a vote? I'm curious.
Well, we got a couple of people for
Free Guy. Free Guy got a couple of votes.
One for Resurrections.
Matrix Resurrections got a little bit of love. Shang-Chi got some love. And what's the last one there? Oh, Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League got a vote. Good for it. So yeah, I mean it's I think I went into this. I voted for Spider-Man. I did give it some thought. It was really down to Spider-Man and Dune for me. I think Dune is a better film, but I think Spider-Man's a better movie. And I know that's a weird distinction.
Yeah.
But I think what it came down to for me is it was the beginning of something versus the end of something. And I found Spider-Man to be more satisfying from beginning to end, whereas I found Dune left me wanting. As beautiful, I mean, it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done. It's well acted. It's well made. It's an excellent picture. But I just found, like, especially where they ended, it just wasn't as satisfying for me as when I thought about what am I going to go back and watch the most next? Like, what will I watch more in the future? What will I want to go back to? If I had those two movies sitting in front of me right now and I could watch either one of them, what would I want to watch? And it's Spider-Man for me.
Really? Yeah. See, to me, I thought Ghostbusters was a really good movie. That's what I voted for.
And I agree. I think that was another really strong contender. That was definitely. I think the 1, 2, 3 is absolutely where I would have gone. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
How about you, Jaime?
I voted on this one for Ghostbusters Afterlife. I have not seen.
Well, you're right, then, obviously.
I have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, so I couldn't vote for that. And I gave Ghostbusters a nudge over Dune. Dune is kind of weird because it's part 1 of 2, so we'll see if they stick the landing. Obviously, we talked about how beautiful of a movie that was, but I'm definitely a big fan of Ghostbusters, so Ghostbusters Afterlife rang true for me.
Next up, so I broke out we had a ton of TV shows, so I broke out the Star Trek stuff into its own category. I just listed all the ones, and of course I didn't list all the ones clearly from what I just earlier said in the follow-up or fact check. But number one, drum roll please, number one Star Trek show is
Star Trek Lower Decks.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's what I voted for.
That's what I voted for too.
Number 2 is Deep Space Nine. And number 3, we would tie for number 3, TNG and Discovery. Interesting. We got 1 vote for the original Star Trek and 2 votes for Picard.
Yeah, I would have liked to have. I was thinking about this category afterwards. And I was thinking it would have been nice to be able to categorize it by the stuff was new last year, right? So if we just had Discovery versus Lower Decks versus Picard versus Prodigy, I wonder how we would have. I mean, I think it probably would have played out the same way, but I wonder if some of those votes that went for things that were more classic, if those went to the new series, how they would have ranked. But I still think Lower Decks. So yeah, I think it would have been interesting to do that. So maybe we'll think about that for next year, so we can sort of capture the one. But yeah, I think consensus is Lower Decks is doing some great Trek. They really are. And Xavier made that point to me when we were talking about it the other day. We were talking about our ballots, and he said I voted for Lower Decks, and the reason I voted for Lower Decks is that even though I don't get all the Trek references, I know that they are probably doing the best Trek right now. And I said, you're probably right. Like, they really are staying very true to Trek, although Prodigy seems to be, because it's kind of the intro to Trek, is doing a pretty good job of being very Trekky. But I would say that Lower Decks feels more true to the overall Trek universe than Discovery does right now, and Picard does.
So we had 5 pages of, like, if you look at this as what, 8 characters or eight shows. So they like it goes on for days in terms of how many TV shows we could have put possibly in here.
Yeah, next year we promise. I did get some feedback from people saying you need to whittle that list down. We'll do that next year. We'll whittle the list down to our favorites first before we do that. Oh, of course, if we do that, people are like, but I wanted to vote for this thing. So yeah,
I did get some of that too.
We ran into the Best Picture award problem for the Academy Awards. It was like, all right, look, when you only had 5, there were at least 1 snub, sometimes 2 per year. But when they went to 10, it's like, man, you really putting Sonic the Hedgehog as top 10? All right, I guess because you had to fill the 10.
Sonic the Hedgehog, no, you're being facetious.
No, I'm being facetious, but it's like not that far from the truth when it comes to the top 10 for the Best Picture. I'm like, dude, that one clearly doesn't belong with these top 5 or 7, right? There's like the final 2 or 3, and I could see people's point there, but there definitely weren't any snubs this year, so we'll take that feedback.
There you go.
All right, so we're up to the best TV show out of all those things. We had 23 votes, and the number 1 show is, Jonathan?
Number 1 show is The Mandalorian. Mandalorian was the winner for best show in the Spocky Awards.
That's what I voted for.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I voted so long ago.
The Expanse was a surprising number 2 from my perspective.
Well, it's interesting because they just came out with a new set of shows recently, right? So, which I haven't watched yet.
Yeah. What else we got votes on here? I'm really curious to see.
We have a three-way tie between Lost in Space, The Boys, and WandaVision. WandaVision was leading for a long time. I guess before we had a lot of votes, right? So WandaVision was holding its own for a while there early on, and so I think Mandalorian probably was in the lead the whole time. Sweet Tooth got 2 votes.
Lower Decks got a vote.
Lower Decks,
yeah,
and Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, and Legends of Tomorrow. No, something else. What's the one below the 8.7% there?
Oh,
Loki. Yeah.
Oh, I think I voted for Loki.
I also voted for Loki. I was wondering how that would rank. I think it's a really tough one too, because there was way more good TV than there was good movies last year, and I think recency bias is real in some of these cases for sure. But I feel like as I was reflecting, Loki in the moment to me just felt like beginning to end the best series last year, but I can't say I disagree with any of these choices. Mandalorian was great. There was so many good sci-fi TV shows. Honestly, when I put this list together, I'm blown away by the wealth of good shows. So
all right, we have best new TV show. We only have 3 pages of best new TV shows.
Yep.
So, and the drum roll goes to, I think you can see it right off you can just see by the color.
Yep.
Oh,
can you?
That was wrong.
Yeah. So, because this was a new series this year, so WandaVision was the winner for best new TV show.
Right.
Yeah, that was my vote. I've enjoyed all the Marvel shows. I think because WandaVision was so weird and different and unique for the first 8 episodes, like 6 or 7 episodes. That's why it got the nod for me. The other ones were a bit more straightforward. Granted, Loki has some madness too, but maybe I'd feel differently if they came out in a different order or something. Like WandaVision was like, whoa, what's going on here? That really sort of stuck out with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in second place we have a tie for Invincible, Xavier's choice, and Star Trek Picard. Oh yeah, interesting. And then we have the 3 tied for 4th and 5th and 6th place are Sweet Tooth, Star Wars Bad Batch, and Loki again.
Yep.
Was Loki new this year? Yeah,
it was
new this year.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
All right. And then we have the big controversial, we only have 2 categories for actor and actress. So.
All right. Well, we'll do what we can here. So our winner for best actor, and we did combine TV and movies for these 2 categories, just for anybody who hasn't had a chance to tune in. Winner for best actor, Tom Hiddleston for Loki. Wow. I agree. That's who I voted for. I think he was incredibly captivating in that series. He was I knew from watching him all these years playing Loki, and I'd seen him in some other things, that he was very talented, but man, he was so incredibly captivating, both, evil and charming and likable, all these things simultaneously on that show. I thought he was amazing.
And if you see him on talk shows, he totally is not Loki.
No, he's an absolute charmer.
Yeah.
So, who was our runner-up? Oh, good runner-up. Anthony Starr for The Boys. He plays Homelander, the villain in The Boys, and he would probably have been my second choice as well. He was amazing in season 2. Like, what an incredibly captivating performance.
Sure. And number 3,
Ryan Reynolds in Free Guy. Again, good
Canada's own. Good
performance. It was again really enjoyable movie. It wasn't high art, but damn, it was funny.
And then the third, we got Simu and
Mississauga's own Tom
Holland and Paul Bettany
for WandaVision. Yeah. So yeah.
And the last slice goes to Anthony Mackie.
1 vote for Anthony Mackie. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I ended up voting for Tom Hiddleston in this one.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then best actress.
Best actress. All right. Elizabeth Olsen for WandaVision.
That was my vote as well.
Cool. Number 2,
Haley Steinfeld for Hawkeye. Seems like a little recency bias in there.
We have a tie for third place.
Third place, Catherine Hahn for WandaVision for being Agatha all along.
Three-way tie.
And Sophia DiMartino for Loki. And McKenna Grace for Ghostbusters. She was great. She was really great. Yeah, I struggled with this category because I thought, there was just an embarrassment of incredible performances by women this year. I thought Rebecca Ferguson was absolutely worthy as well. She ended up getting a vote in here too, but I voted for Sophia DiMartino. I think, again, she played such a very nuanced character in the alternate Loki character from Loki that she really worked for me, but I completely struggled between her, Elizabeth Olsen, and McKenna Grace. Those were the three that I really
Interesting we didn't have Florence Pugh in our list here.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
She might have gotten some juice off that Hawkeye series. I thought she was really good in the Black Widow movie. I thought she was amazing in the Hawkeye show.
Oh, she was hilarious in that. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, we have a two-way tie for most anticipated movie.
Yeah, and this is the one I was actually, I think, most curious about. So let's see what we got for our winners. So a two-way tie for most anticipated movie of 2022, The Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman, and Thor: Love and Thunder. Tie.
Oh, you guys can thank me for the tie, because it would have been The Batman had I not voted for Thor: Love and Thunder. There you go.
So you wasted your vote.
And what do we have for those? There's the three-way tie for third place.
Third place, okay.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So yeah. No love for Avatar 2.
Well, we got
Jurassic World Dominion got a vote.
Oh wait, how did we get Spider?
Hang on.
What? We have some weird math going on.
Just late breaking news here. We actually have a three-way tie for first place.
How did we get that? Across the Universe Part 1. Wow, I think Google's messed up.
Oh, Google. All right, then I would like to restate for the record our three-way tie for most anticipated movie of 2022: The Batman, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1.
How did that work? That's weird, eh?
What's the little red sliver under there too? Because that one is
this guy.
That's Avatar. Somebody did. We got a vote for Avatar. Yeah. I personally cast my vote on the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse. I thought that first movie was incredible. Probably one of the best movies I've seen in the last decade. Hands down, one of the best animated movies I've ever seen. And I cannot wait to go back into that universe. Cannot wait.
So if you have indoor plumbing and internet, the best streaming service to get would also be clearly Disney Plus.
Yes. So best streaming service for 2021. Disney Plus was a runaway winner in this category. Almost 60% of the vote went to Disney Plus. So they had a banner year, folks.
Yeah, and then
Netflix is number 2.
Yeah, that's like refrigerated food, right?
HBO Max / Crave.
Ooh. And then the last vote went to Apple TV.
1 vote for Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
I voted for Disney Plus. As you mentioned, it's 60% of the vote. What you didn't mention is that Netflix at number 2 was around 27%. So a huge drop off from number 1 to number 2, and then that much more of a drop off from number 2 to 3 and 4.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this is an accurate reflection of where we're at after 2021. Disney Plus has become essential. It really did dominate pop culture, especially in the sci-fi fantasy world.
So then I just put a general question just to sort of get some numbers from people, and it's like, have you seen a movie this year was my question. And so we have, on a streaming service, we have 90% of the people who voted have seen something on a streaming service. Obviously, in the theater more than once, we had 11 people vote for that.
So that's almost 50% of our voters, yeah.
Yeah, and then we got rented something digitally, a good chunk there. And then borrowed or downloaded, we don't care how.
Fell off the back of a truck.
something on home premiere also at 34% of the vote.
Yeah, I mean, we did that for Black Widow here. That's how we watched Black Widow.
And then 13% bought digital. 13% bought digitally, and 20% bought a disc. Right. So yeah, and then some people on VPN. One person is being bad. All right, and then streaming services you've used. This is the collect them all categories to help the Lopez calculus math here. 100% of the people watch Netflix. Wow.
Yeah.
We joke it's like electricity, and it sort of is, right? It's the default.
It's funny though, because Netflix is so ubiquitous, right? It's been there for a number of years, and so it's certainly something that over the course of time you have acquired. But I think it's really telling that was 100%. So everybody who voted watched something on Netflix last year. But the fact that
or has access to
it. The other one, the second place one, is a tie between Prime and Disney Plus, and those are almost 83% each. So most people got those, and considering that Disney Plus is only 2 years old, that's again pretty interesting market.
If you have Prime, like you normally get Prime for free delivery, you get Prime Video for free, so rolled in. So
yeah, I'm not surprised for Prime Video being in a tie for number 2 there, because after the electricity that is Netflix, you have I got to get stuff delivered, especially during a pandemic. So you got Prime, and so Prime Video sort of unfairly benefits from that. And so I think the huge story here that you pointed out is Disney Plus coming out of nowhere and providing so much value, hashtag not a sponsor, so much value that they're number 2, right? Even though they don't have the years of like, it's, Netflix and chill is entered the lexicon. Like, it's not like Netflix, it's not electricity, it's not like Prime Video that it's kind of wrapped up into something else. You have to go out of your way to get Disney Plus. Now, you might be doing it for like the kiddos and then you hung around for Mandalorian or something, but like very clearly people are choosing Disney Plus explicitly here in the modern era.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, though, I don't know about you, but I've noticed a few of the services that I use outside of television are also offering to give you 6 months of free Disney as well, right now. So, and then the Apple TV came in fourth, let's say, at 69%, which basically meant like, most people got into Apple TV Plus because they got a phone or a Mac or something, right? And they got given most of us had a full year last year during the pandemic. And then, now, I think now, is it back to 3 months now when you buy something? You get it for a year when you buy a brand new device, right?
They might have dropped that to 3 months. And I think we might have talked about that on MTJC actually a while ago, where it was like, well, when they hardly had anything, a whole year was worth it. Now that they've got, a couple different seasons of stuff, it's like, look, man, if you can't figure it out in 3 months, it's not for you, right?
Yeah, and then so we have cable and cable TV. Like 56% of us still have cable. The other one that's interesting is Crave and HBO Max, because those I kind of clumped those together earlier, but and I guess we sort of have to do some. I don't know what the split is on our population here, but I know that 60% of the people who listen to this show are American, so we can throw like more love towards the HBO number and say that more people have HBO percentage-wise. Even though it looks like Crave and HBO are relatively the same, right? So, Discovery Plus, we have 2 people voted for that. 2 people will have ESPN, and 2 people have Peacock as well. Paramount Plus, some people have that, and Hulu as well, right?
Yeah, so Paramount Plus compared to Crave, I think, tells a little something to the audience voting here, where I don't know that there's a whole lot of reason to have Paramount Plus if you're in Canada, but if you're listening to this show, you obviously have Paramount Plus, because that's the only way, other than the fell off a truck way, that's the only way you're getting your Star Trek, right?
Oh, you're talking about the Americans, the 60% of the folks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just listening to the show because they love our voice. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so I'll publish these in a bunch of tweets after I've published the show, so we don't let the cat out of the bag.
Yep.
As it were.
But yeah, I think this was an interesting look at where we're at in pop culture. I think obviously we stated where our perspectives are, but it's interesting to see sort of where the larger collective goes. It's interesting. And to the person who's looking forward to Avatar 2, I just don't even know what to say to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, were there any surprises other than Avatar 2?
No, I mean, again, I think some of it's just personal preference. I don't disagree with any of the winners. I'm not like, oh my God, how could you vote for that? There was, I mean, I think even just building this list, I looked at it and was just like, damn, there was a lot of really good performances, a lot of really good shows, a lot of really good experiences. I think, it just said to me that the quality, particularly on the television front, the quality has never been so high.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, and then we'll move on to our watch lists and wrap up the show. So what do you got for us, Jonathan, first?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. So got news this last week that we are going to get a book that I have been wanting for a very, very long time. So Alan Moore is one of my very favorite writers, as he is for many comic fans. He, of course, is famous for things like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, From Hell. Lots of different stories that have been made into very famous works. One of the first things that he did was a series back in England where he took an old British superhero character named Marvel Man, and he took Marvel Man and sort of reimagined what his life would have been like if he was that sort of happy-go-lucky character in the 1960s. What would his life be like in the 1980s? And really took one of the first times anybody had ever really done that sort of twisted mirror look at the golden age of comic books. And it was mind-blowing in the moment that somebody was doing that. It was basically being like, what if Superman forgot that he was Superman and was just like living a normal life, and then after not remembering for 20 years suddenly had his powers back and was like, oh wait, I'm actually a super being again. And so Marvel Man first appeared in a series in the UK. It was told in sort of in serial format in little bibs and bobs. It was reprinted here in North America by a now defunct company called Eclipse that published it for a number of issues, had some delays, all kinds of problems. Eventually it went bankrupt, and not only did it go bankrupt, but the company's headquarters flooded, and a lot of the original work was destroyed. So it was kind of a cult book for a long time. Basically, what was out there was out there. You could only read it if you had the actual original comics for a number of years. And then later, the series went into a series of legal battles because Todd McFarlane, the very famous artist, Canadian artist, he bought the rights of everything that Eclipse had owned. And so he thought he owned the character. He started trying to find a way to work the character into his Spawn comic books. And then it turned out that, as a matter of fact, he didn't own Miracle Man because Alan Moore actually owned it, and he gave the rights to Neil Gaiman because Neil Gaiman actually did a small story arc near the end of its publication. And so Neil Gaiman basically sued Todd McFarlane in a very famous case for comic fans and proved that he held the rights, and then took those rights to Marvel Comics about a decade ago and said, okay, I want to tell the final chapter that I had always intended to tell of this story. And to do that, I will bring you the rights so that you can republish it. So Marvel has reprinted in individual issues and then in small trade paperbacks or little hardcovers the work that had been done on that series, but it's never been assembled as one big piece of work, particularly the Alan Moore stuff, all the stuff that had appeared in Britain, all these different little small pieces of the story. There's never really been one compendium to tell the story, and long story short, we're finally getting that. So the Miracle Man Omnibus, and it's called Miracle Man because originally it wasn't owned by Marvel, and they didn't want to call it Marvel Man here in North America because there was a rights issue. They were afraid Marvel was going to sue Eclipse, so they called it Miracle Man. So they're publishing it as the Miracle Man Omnibus. It's coming in September. You can pre-orders I haven't seen yet. I will definitely be pre-ordering this one. It will collect the entire original run that Alan Moore wrote, and that first appeared in Warrior magazine in the UK, and then some of the stuff that appeared here in Eclipse, and all of it in one place for the first time. It will not include any of the Neil Gaiman storylines because he only told sort of the first chunk of his story in the original issues, and he is intending to go back. The rumor is that this year he and Mark Buckingham, who is the artist that worked on it with him, are going to go back and actually do the final chapter of that story, and then hopefully we'll get an omnibus that collects all that as well. But all this to say, it is very, very highly anticipated to have all this work in one place, in one book that you can have on your shelf, that you can enjoy and read. It is an absolute masterpiece. It is a beautiful piece of storytelling. It has some of the most renowned artists, Alan Davis, Gary Leach, John Totleben. There's a whole series of, it's a who's who of amazing artists from the time that worked on it. And Alan Moore at, just bringing some really, really interesting ideas to the table. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. I'm so happy that they're finally doing it.
Cool. And next,
I just wanted to throw this one in. So my youngest son and I sat down to watch a new series on Netflix this last week. It is called Inside Job. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but Inside Job is basically about the people who work for work in the U.S. in Washington, who run the organization that secretly runs the world. And it's a workplace comedy set in.
So it's a documentary, right?
Yeah. It's a workplace comedy. It's animated, and it is created by one of the writers from the Disney series Gravity Falls, and is executive produced by Alex Hirsch, who created Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls was an absolute masterpiece of a show. It's something that my son and I have watched a couple of times in its entirety. It's a kid's show, but it's a kid's show filled with like conspiracy theories and, all these sort of, mysteries of the occult and all these weird things. And it's particularly well regarded because, unlike a lot of sort of Disney shows and cartoons and stuff like that, they basically told a beginning to end story. It was 2 seasons, it was 40 episodes, and it was done. And people were like, oh no, it's so great, you should do more. And he's like, no, I told my whole story, I'm done. And people were just flabbergasted because, again, that's not how a lot of these companies work. They just keep milking it until it's, run out. But this show really picks that baton up and runs with it from Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls was very kid friendly, but it certainly played on a lot of layers. I enjoyed it as an adult very much. And this show takes it to the next level. So it's all tied in with, the Illuminati and the all the conspiracies that people have about the US government and who really runs things, all stuff, but it's hilariously funny. And it is very adult. It's, there's drugs, there's swearing, there's sex, all kinds of stuff. Not obviously graphically, but it's done for humorous effect. It has an amazing voice cast. Lizzie Kaplan is the star. Christian Slater is one of the voices. It's just filled with great performers, a lot of great stand-up comedians in there. And it's only 10 episodes. It came out at the end of October on Netflix. I had circled it as something I would get to, and we were looking for something to watch the other day. We watched the first couple episodes and we're like, oh yeah, we're watching this whole thing in a couple of days. And it's hilarious. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Made me laugh my ass off, and would highly recommend anybody, especially if you were a fan of Gravity Falls, but even if you weren't, it stands up on its own. It's super funny, great cast, and yeah, highly worth a watch.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think I even heard about that one coming out when it did.
I saw it today come up as I was flipping through just for something to watch.
Yeah, it's super, super funny. Like I was surprised. It's extremely, extremely like dark and funny humor. But yeah, very, very, very enjoyable. And I don't know if either of you guys ever watched Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls is, again, definitely targeted more to a younger audience, but one of those shows like we talked about with Lower Decks, we talked about with, even Prodigy, it really plays to different levels depending on who you are. I found it just as enjoyable, and at times like surprisingly dark for a kids program. Like there's some stuff there where you're like, did they just kill a kid? Like what's happening here? Like it goes some dark places and you're like, wow, this is surprisingly dark. Like they have this big crossover event at the end where they bring all the storylines together, and it's like hell on earth, and there's like monsters, and it goes some pretty dark places, but Inside Job does the same thing, but again, very much, at one point in the show there, just to give you an example, there's a great bit where they go inside sort of this James Bond, slash Dr. Evil kind of, bad guy. They go inside his volcano lair, and not only did they like capture the guy and sort of imprison him, but they repossess his lair, and then they're trying to figure out how to turn it into an Airbnb. Like, it's just, it's that kind of stuff, yeah, good stuff.
Cool. I mean, what you got to binge now?
Mine is, and I don't know, we might have mentioned it before as a thing to check out, but now I'd say you can go binge the entire season 1 of Wheel of Time on Amazon Video. Since we know most of you have it, you have no excuse to not watch it if you're into swords and sorcery kind of things.
Yeah, I tried. I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, did you watch the whole thing, Jaime?
I did. And I'm not somebody who's seen the books, so I can't compare there. It is not Lord of the Rings, and it's not Game of Thrones early seasons, but that was pretty good. I put it up there in sort of that tier where Shadow and Bone is. That leans a little bit more young adult than it does old adult. But still pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, I like the main actress, Rosamund Pike. I think she's in some of Edgar Wright's stuff too as well.
Yeah, she's really good. I've seen her in a few different things. I thought she was really
she's
good.
in Gone Girl too.
Oh, she's amazing in Gone Girl. Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I don't know. So I sent you guys a message the other day. I didn't even know this was coming out. We thought that Doctor Who was done for the year. But there was a New Year's Eve episode that came out on the 1st of January, obviously. But so I sent you guys a message. Did you get a chance to catch it or see it at all?
Did not.
I'm going to go with no.
No, I PVR'd it, but I have not had a chance to catch up with it. I didn't finish the last couple episodes of the regular season first, so I wanted to finish that up first.
Well, it's interesting. The first episode that came out this year was on Halloween night, I think, right? And it actually the story takes place on October 31st. And this one takes place on New Year's Eve. It's called The Eve of the Daleks, and of course, no spoilers that the Daleks are, if you've never seen Doctor Who, then you don't know who the Daleks is, but if you have seen Doctor Who, then of course you know who the Daleks are. So it's an interesting sort of timey-wimey, self-contained episode with Yaz and the new guy and the Doctor. And a couple of characters that are just in there. So it's just the 5 actors. Obviously, a very sort of, I guess, a COVID-friendly kind of production because it was very, there were not large groups of people. So it's a real interesting thing. I'm just going to say timey-wimey, some Daleks in there. I'm not going to give it away at all, but you definitely check it out. And at the end of it, there was a teaser for the next episode, which is actually also listed on IMDb with a preview image, which means it is a legit in the can episode called Legends of the Sea Devils, and that they showed a teaser of that at the end of The Eve of the Daleks. So there is another episode coming to a TV near you soon.
So what do they mean by soon? Like, is that like coming? Well,
I would. It doesn't have a date. It doesn't have a release date. Let me just double check that again. Actually, IMDb. It doesn't show, like, they just showed a preview, and by the way, this is of the new era of Doctor Who. This Legends of the Sea Monsters will be, or Legends of the Sea Devils will be the 200th or the 199th episode. I thought we already talked about that, though, didn't we? You guys remember?
Remember.
Mm-hmm. I thought we already had the 200th episode, but anyway, they're listing 200 here. Yeah, so it says episode number 8. It doesn't have a release date. Scrolling. It just says 2022 UK, so not sure when it's coming out, but it is ready to go. So hopefully this week. I don't know. This Sunday. I'll have to check my PVR because I have it set to automatically record Doctor Who's when they come out.
So not to go too into the Spoilerville, but this is the crescendo building towards the end of the current Doctor's time as the current Doctor, right?
That's theory. Yeah. Dan Lewis is the character played by John Bishop. I didn't get his name right. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'm not going to say it. But there is a. We've talked about it on the show in the past. There's a thing that's left unsaid in the current Doctor Who, and it's kind of not left unsaid in the episode, but the Doctor, being the dolt that she is, doesn't quite get it. The Doctor always sort of has a little bit of, sort of that. The Doctor's always got a sort of Asperger's kind of like not really. I mean, earlier Doctors seemed to understand everything that was going on around them, but the last couple of Doctors have had a few things where you're like, are you paying attention here? Yeah. Anyway, so that's it for another week. And so I guess, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram as @GPK News.
All right. And Jaime, if people want to get a hold of you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
All right. And my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, on the Twitter machine as well. You'll find me. Until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. This is Jean-Luc Picard. Shut up, Wesley. Sorry, say again. Just the tag. Gotcha. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
And that's it, bro. We're done. It's a wrap.
Forever. What?
Forever? What?
What?
What? Yeah. No, not so much. Actually, it's funny because one of our podcast people that we even sort of came up with, they started about 6 months before More Than Just Code. They just did their final episode. Well, their final regular episode.
Quitters.
They didn't quite put the bow on it, but they just sort of said, yeah, they're taking a step back for a while. You saw that, Jaime?
Yeah, the release notes one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so interesting.
Okay, so the one thing we didn't get because Jaime was off for a couple of weeks is I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Hawkeye. We didn't get to follow up on the last couple episodes of Hawkeye. What did you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The finale's a little strange in that it doesn't have like a huge crescendo moment. It kind of has 3 different sort of smaller moments of the mom getting taken out in prison, the Kingpin getting shot at least, and Hawkeye winning with words against Yelena.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't have quite the traditional ending. It certainly does feel like it's setting up for future stuff, season 2 and, other stuff that's going to happen in other shows or other movies.
Yeah, I think that was when we talked about it over the last couple episodes. I think that's what we came to was they really had done an interesting job of laying all these paths towards the finale, but they almost had too much to do, and it really felt like it was just overstuffed.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
But still pretty satisfying. I thought, again, like everybody came up. Like, it's funny because Renner is kind of, I think in a lot of people's minds, the weakest link of the Avengers franchise. As far as, he doesn't get the most screen time. He's certainly not the most attractive of the bunch. He doesn't necessarily get a lot of the attention. But even he came out as a winner on this series. I mean, I think the real winner was Florence Pugh as Yelena. She stole every scene she was in. But, again, this series, they introduced, it was the backdoor pilot for the Echo series that's coming. We got Yelena's carryover from Black Widow and to sort of continue building on her. We got this new Haley Steinfeld Hawkeye character, which she was great, I thought, really enjoyable. And then we kind of get this sort of bow on the Hawkeye, original Hawkeye character. The question I asked last week for Xavier and for Tim, and I'd like to know what you think, Jaime. Do you think this is the sort of bow on that Hawkeye, if you pardon the pun, that we're not going to get more of him going forward, that this is sort of passing the torch?
Ooh, that's a good question. it certainly seems to leave itself open to that, but he was, too old for this stuff from the movies, and yet they brought him back out again. So I don't know. I kind of wonder where he'll end up with things.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll be like, the guy behind the guy. She'll be out. The Kate Bishop character will be the one out in the field doing the stuff, and he'll be there on the computer or something, not necessarily in the field. I mean, I thought they did a good job of sort of the one thing that kind of went under the radar a little bit is just the fact that they introduced his hearing impairment. So in the comic books, Hawkeye has been hearing impaired for 25 plus years, 30, well, more than that, 40, 30, 35 years. And I love that they were like, wow, how did this happen? And then they show the whole sequence of scenes from the different movies where things explode next to his head. And you're like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That, of course, you've gone, lost your hearing because of all this stuff you've gone through. But I did think that between that and just the wear and tear that he shows over the course of this adventure he goes on with Kate, the bruises, the ice packs, the bandages and stuff, they did a good job of just sort of, without having to beat you over the head with it, explaining to you that like even the best of them have to take it, have to reach the end of the road at some point. Like if he keeps going out there, he is going to die.
Yeah. The person behind the person is interesting because it brings to mind Batman Beyond, where Bruce Wayne lets I can't remember the younger Batman's name.
Terry.
Yes, Terry. Let's Terry be the Batman in the suit, and Bruce Wayne is the person behind the scenes. Yeah. That could be where they go with it. Did we ever talk about in this show the idea that if your name is Kate or Katie, that you like bow and arrows? Because we have Kate in this show in Hawkeye with the bow and arrow, and we also have Katie in Shang-Chi doing the bow and arrow.
And Katniss in Hunger Games.
Yeah,
Katniss, yeah, it works. Keeps it going. Yeah. Again, I think I honestly, if I don't know if it was their intention always to continue, or it just was because of the crackling chemistry between Florence Pugh and Haley Steinfeld. But if they aren't thinking of finding some way to team those two up in another show, they are insane, because they were so much fun together.
Yeah.
That last episode, that was the highlight of the last episode by far, was the fight scene and the elevator and the running down the side of the building. And that was so funny. And even the scene in the episode before that with the macaroni and cheese, and they were just so good together. Their chemistry was so strong, and I think it comes down to them both being really talented actors. But they, I want to see the two of them on a team up adventure 100%. And they have to bring the dog.
Right.
Pizza dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky the pizza dog.
Pizza dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So we know, like, obviously right now we're in Book of Boba Fett. We don't have they haven't said what the next thing from Disney Plus is. Obviously we've got another 5 weeks of Book of Boba. So sometime probably in the next 2-3 weeks, they'll announce sort of what the next thing is. But Disney Plus can be counted on so far to not give us really much more than a week or so of downtime between their marquee things. I wonder what we'll see next. Will it be another Star Wars property? Will it be a Marvel property? What's going to be the next thing that's going to come through Disney Plus?
Interesting.
That's the other category I should put in there, is most anticipated TV show.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
We'll talk next week, guys.
Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Ew. Gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.